Now we're good.
We're on. Good evening and welcome to the Township of Bedminster Township Committee regularly scheduled meeting for September 3, 2019. It is 7:02 and I will recognize that we have a quorum. Committeewoman Moreski has an excused absence tonight. Ms. Sullivan, may we please have the Open Public Meetings Act statement?
Yes, sir. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was sent to the Courier News in Somerville and Burnsville News in Whippany to all subscribers and also posted here at the Municipal Building as of January 7th, 2019.
Great, thank you. Please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Once again, good evening and happy September. Wow, it's crazy. It's September already.
We'll be freezing in no time.
We will be freezing in no time. Approval of the minutes. We have 2 minutes to go through. That's the August 19, 2019 regular Township Committee meeting minutes and the August 19 executive closed session meeting minutes. Has everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes and send comments to Ms. Sullivan? And if not, now's your last opportunity. Seeing none, may we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Permits and raffles. We have 4 permits and raffles. First is raffle license for Hugs for Brady Foundation, held at Fiddler's Elbow Country Club on October 7, 2019, from 12:30 to 8 p.m. Next, social affair permit for Raritan Headwaters Association at 2121 Larger Cross Road on October 13, 2019, from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Next is the social affair permit for Expert Miracles Foundation, Inc. at Fiddler's Elbow Country Club on September 24, 2019, from 7:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the last is social affair permit for the Brooke Healy Foundation at Fiddler's Elbow Country Club on September 16, 2019, from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Any questions or comments regarding permits and raffles?
Thinking that's the Expect Miracles Foundation?
Actually, I had to double check that, but it is Expert Miracles, yes.
Really?
That's, yeah.
Okay.
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Twice each night, we open that microphone and that stand for public comments. Does any member of the public have comments they'd like to make tonight?
I so rise.
Mr. Haggerty, please come up. You know the drill.
Good evening, Brian Haggerty, Bedminster, Fairview Drive. Couple of questions. Whereas in land use, which you're an expert in the zoning board applications and land use board applications, some applicants appear to be electing to go to the Historic Preservation Commission first, sometimes even before the official application is in. How does the township feel, decide, or determine whether the requirements of open public meeting, open public record, defer to Mayor Council, McGovern versus Rutgers, whether the spirit of allowing the public notice to hear all elements of the development of a decision is being fulfilled? You don't have to answer tonight, but
Are you asking a legal question?
I would.
Because it sounds like, Brian, you're asking a legal question as opposed to the Historic Preservation Commission.
There aren't any attorneys in the room. It's just that the policies of the, I mean, only one person is serving as an attorney, if that's not the question. The rest of you are off duty. It's a policy question. And perhaps you need to consult with council or council of land use board as well, of whether applicants for variances who intend to have hearings are going to the commissions first before they formally even notice the adjoiners. If that's a policy term, making things right for open public meetings, it could be construed as part of the process of approval. So,
Well, I'm pretty certain that our attorney can probably end most of your
well, you can
question.
ask for a legal question. I can't.
Well,
On my behalf, please.
If they appear before the board, which is a combined board, they adhere to all Open Public Meetings Act statements. I don't have a copy of the Historical Commission ordinance in front of me, so I'd have to look at that. Is there any requirement that they notice for that? It's an advisory board, right? If I have the book, I'll look at it and tell you in a minute, so.
You got it? Okay. John, okay.
Looking at what the general words
The-
or
It would probably be in general.
Yeah, John.
Thank you. I was expecting prompts, but I should expect.
right, it is right. Right, it's always been.
The only thing I can tell you is the township always adheres to the Open Public Meetings Act. It's always done things in a legal fashion. Certainly the planning board, the combined board, has always done that under the direction of Mr. Collins.
My concern is that historic preservation and perhaps environmental, perhaps recreation, always have benefit of legal counsel at every meeting. And as the agenda becomes known is a big question. The meetings get noticed in January or February sometimes. And it's not clear cut when an agenda needs to be updated and posted on the website. Now, in another...
Do you want to make the distinction between advisory boards and?
I'm not sure,
certainly we'll find out.
I'm not sure.
No, no, but
he
just
has
in
a
general.
Specific
Well,
question.
they do the
Well, here, let's just, so the issue about advisory boards versus.
And
boards.
under the Township Committee form of government, you can have advisory boards. Advisory boards make recommendations. They have no powers to make binding recommendations. They're simply making recommendations. So some of these boards don't have to notice, but they do by ordinance in some towns give notice, in other towns they don't. So it really depends on what your local ordinance says.
We do an annual meeting notice at the
Right.
end of the year for all the different boards. And then we.
Including all the advisory boards as well.
Right. that's
Correct.
all.
I absolutely, that's how I know they exist. but
And
there's-
typically with land use boards, they will get a report from the Environmental Commission, they'll get a report from other boards, and they'll consider it at their meeting.
Right.
Typically, if I may just interject, the engineer's letter of finding of is it completion and the planner's memorandum are available to the public before the meeting. The agenda is posted usually a couple of days in advance of land use board hearing. The applications come up earlier as they're announced that there is an application. But sometimes, and it might be in part because of less frequent meetings schedule of the historic preservation, the minutes are not out until after the land use hearing, and there never was a pre-notice that, well, I'll give you an example. There's one property in discussion that sounds like they've already gone to the Historic Preservation Commission. I've actually found minutes online of those meetings, but I don't think it's officially an application yet to zoning, although it's anticipated to be one. So it's delayed to notice their appearance before the Historic Preservation Commission, other than saying, well, you have notice in January there would be a meeting, but we did not know the agenda. There was a sort of a gadfly member of another branch of government here that's sort of involved in education at the state level. It was really a nudge at getting agendas out on time, and sort of a real pest to an adjoining district that might have a receiving relationship with the school. It kind of runs a little bit under the radar, if you know what I mean. Just an observation and a concern.
So noted.
An observation and a concern.
Well, it sounds to me, Brian, that you're asking a legal question, which is really if it's an advisory board, whether or not they're subject to Open Public Meetings Act requirements.
They read the act. They read the act statement to start the meeting.
Start the meeting, But those decisions themselves, if they are binding or not binding, that may be the issue, and I believe that's what Mr. Bellardo is probably looking for
Yeah,
now.
I don't see it in here, Judy. You'd have to tell me where the historic, and I don't see it in the index, so maybe it's in the other book.
Might be a land use book.
It's actually in the land use, I think it's in, I just think it's in 13300, but I probably don't know
Yeah,
about
it's
that.
13308.
Sorry, did some homework.
You have any questions, so we can do some
Yes,
filler
well,
until the book comes back?
Moving past the legal aspects, by policy, I would no reason that the Township Committee couldn't direct by ordinance, amendment to 13308, et cetera, that once an item becomes known, especially as related to something that's going to become a hearing, that it could be similar to the subscribers and posted on the website and so forth. I don't think if you're imposing an extra legal duty on an applicant by having them notice.
Do you have a particular application you're concerned with, rather than talking in generalities?
The five applications are in front of the land use board right now. All of them
Okay.
went to historic before they came to land use, before they got their docket number. They all came in there.
I'm
Uh,
not aware that there's anything that precludes them from doing that.
So I observe it's probably become a strategy. The one whose number I can quote off is 2019-005. Almost certainly did it. The one that's not yet docketed already has been before the Historic Commission. The Primrose School has been in the Historic Commission. I believe their first hearing is Thursday. So it just seems to be standard practice now.
Maybe when they appear before the land use board, they want to go in and inform the land use board members that it's already undergone a historical review.
Right.
John, it may also be that the application itself requires that there be some indication that they've appeared or gone before
Right.
the historic press. So that might actually be built into the application completeness, that they've already made that.
You often see that applicants go before the environmental commission before they come before a land use board. That way the land use board has a report from the environmental commission. It just makes sense.
Couple that with the non-binding but considered recommendations and the lack of agendas being posted on the website 48 hours in advance. And the observation becomes a concern. Okay. Add to that, the minutes don't get published until usually after the hearing has begun. It becomes more of a concern.
There's a requirement that they comply with the Open Public Meetings Act, the Historic Commission, so I imagine they do so, right, Ms. Sullivan?
With just the meetings are posted
Yes,
at that annual notice.
and that is sufficient to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act.
Okay. So noted. I probably have others, but that was exhaustive and my 3 minutes has exceeded.
If you,
Nah, good.
there's no line behind you. Well, if you had another question,
They're charged under the ordinance with reviewing site plans or subdivisions, so I imagine when they submit to the land use board, a copy goes to the commission reviews it pursuant to the ordinance and pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act.
Question though is, can they review are they to review site plans and subdivisions before they even assigned a number and notice the,
Sure.
they are?
Yeah, the application comes in, it goes to them, they have a meeting, it's pursuant to a public agenda, and they review it. People can look at the agenda and go to the meeting.
No, we can't. There's no agenda.
Well, I don't know if there is or isn't, so.
So the agenda is not always posted,
So how does the applicant make an appointment when they show up?
They do make an appointment, but I will tell you, yeah, the agenda is not always posted, so.
So the first act by the applicant may be to make an appointment to appear for the Historic Commission, which apparently they may do without giving notice to the adjoiners and without putting that in the legal notice.
They're not a land
there's
use,
no-
they're not a
there's no
land use
notice.
board, they're not
Right.
required to give notice to people under the municipal land use law.
do you understand that difference? Because you're nodding your head, but I'm sensing that you don't You have the municipal land use law for land use board applications, or really planning board and board of adjustment applications.
I don't.
You have, then you've got historic pres, then you've got
Right.
environmental, and you've got these other
Right.
advisory groups. But they're
And
they're not
that's what
subject
I
to,
feel-
they're not subject to the MLUL requirements.
Of notice. And I can hold my own opinion, that I don't think that's in the spirit of McGovern, as legal as it may be. And I think it would be useful to change something about that.
Okay,
Consider that.
considered.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Microphone is still available for public comment. Seeing none. Monthly report discussions by subcommittee chair. We will start with Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Just to start with DPW, a couple updates. John, if I misspeak, just jump in on me here. Paving of the roads off on River Road. The rest will be hopefully completed this week, by the end of the week. We've got an issue over in Knox Park. Some of the residents over there are concerned about some dead trees. And so the first step would be to authorize Paul Ferrero to do a survey to make sure that we're addressing trees that are our jurisdiction, if you will, and not somebody else's. We need to make sure we know where these trees are located. So the estimated cost for that's about $3,500.
That's for a survey?
Yes. But we have to delineate the property lines to make sure that the work that's going in there is actually work on our dime. The HVAC here at Town Hall, one of the contractors has been contracted and is going to do a replacement of one of the units.
Correct.
And the direct installed lighting here has been completed, so we're just waiting for some of the numbers to shake out on that, right? We're just waiting for some numbers on that?
Yeah, right.
So as of right now, we've got the paperwork into the contractor that, and I forget the whole scenario, but Colin and I met with them. Paperwork's in, they submit to the state, they get all the approvals, waiting on an invoice at this point in time, so it's, I believe, a $19,000 project, which is going to cost the municipality about $1,500.
This is great.
Everything else is new.
The storm's coming through the area. Still working on, regrading the roads and filling in some of the washout, but that's sort of putting us at a delay for the Pluckman Schoolhouse Park repairs, which we're hopefully going to start on next week, but that's just been taking a back seat because of all the roads repairs. We're still continuing to work through shared service with the sewer, and I won't get too much into it, but between last meeting and this meeting, I had to sit down with Colin, Judy, and Art Tebow to go through some of the issues on the contract with the DPW employees. So that's it on DPW. There's been some chit chat on social media about the dog park and some of the users and some aggressive users of the dog park. I don't know if anybody's contacted you, Chief, or your department. I think the first line of defense will be, to contact the police if there's an issue out there and go out there and make a report. There was a picture of the person. I think we know who it is, so I'll try to reach out to see if we can smooth that over. And we continue to go through discussions on shared court. So that's it.
Okay. Committeeman Hickey.
Mayor, thank you. Good evening, all. Let's start with rec, and just a reminder, if you're a couch potato or an aspiring couch potato, we have the Recovering Couch Potato Program for all ages that kicks off Wednesday, September 25th, 7 p.m. right here. Registration is free, but you need to register with Robin Ray by Friday, September 20th. Just want to remind, that's a nice program. Actually came to our attention, as we mentioned before, as a result of the farmers market. Doug had mentioned Pluckman Schoolhouse Park, and a lot of the investments we've made and will continue to make in that facility are paying dividends. The picnic pavilion has been rented every weekend through October, so good use on that. And our adult sand volleyball program has been extended through October. We already have 41 adult registrants, and that's nice because obviously we made pretty sizable investment in refurbishing that, thank you, John, earlier this year, and it's getting good use, so there's nice payback there. Board of Health, we had no meeting in August due to lack of quorum, we'll reconvene on the 19th. I know Renee is not here tonight. I'll just sub in on one item for the Environmental Commission. The Lamington River Restoration Project, the work will resume later this week and should take about a week to complete. Joe Arbani and the crew basically do the work in two phases. They've done the initial work, they let the river settle down, kind of redirect, find its course and flow, and then they come back and finish up. And that's what they'll do later on this week. Township engineer did an inspection of the work, found everything was in keeping with the plans. We did receive some feedback from some of the residents about the condition of the water. Somebody compared it to mocha coffee. I did speak with Paul Ferrero, and he reminded us that we here in Bedminster have red clay soil, and that has very fine particles in it. And when that is mixed up, those particles tend to stay suspended a long time, and take a long time to settle back down. So as Paul put it, the water will look muddier than it actually is. But in a few weeks, everything should turn to normal. So I just want to let folks know that. And Mayor, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Only update I have is our next Bedminster Charities Fall Fest meeting is September 26th. We got good news from AT&T that all of their screens are available for us, so we will be
That's
able
great.
to watch college football at Fall Fest. So for those who want to come out and enjoy the outdoors, that's great. But for those who say that they want to watch college football, we'll have 3 different screens. We'll update you more as we have our next meeting on the 26th, and AT&T will be coming to that as
Great.
well. And then-
Great, thank you. So my updates are, we do have a land use board meeting with one planning board application that Mr. Hickey and I are eligible to participate in, and that's for the property on Lamington. That's the Nervine application, which is tentatively the bakery. And there's, as Mr. Haggerty so noted, the Primrose School is coming in for an application. That is a Board of Adjustment matter that we are not eligible to participate on, but certainly folks are encouraged to come out for those applications. Shared Court, Mr. Stevenson had also mentioned we continue discussions with Shared Court. We do have some issues coming up this week. Still crunching numbers on where we stand with additional expenses that may be coming in and may be changing as we contemplate a change of prosecutor, as our prosecutor is leaving and we need to find a replacement prosecutor pretty quickly. So we do have those interviews coming in, and once again, I'm still crunching the numbers to look at expansion of their court. Those discussions will continue. And let's see, Farmers Market, we see anything new for this week. This week we have Delicious Heights coming, and I believe the PTO is coming to Farmers Market as well this weekend, as well as Fall Fest. So they started selling the Fall Fest 50/50 raffles, and I believe PTO is selling some raffles this coming weekend at Farmers Market, so we hope to see you all there.
October 26th.
October 26th is Fall Fest.
Saturday.
Yes.
Last day of Farmers Market.
Last day of the Farmers Market. Thank you for that
5K
reminder.
run.
Yes, and the 5K run. That is it for subcommittee reports. Ms. Sullivan, may we please have the administrator's report?
Not too much from me. Most of what we'll be talking about tonight will have an exec session. We do have the EV charging station project under the works out in the parking lot. Mr. Mance, any updates?
They have failed some inspections quite a few times at this point in time for lack of following their own plans. So it's going back and forth, moving along.
What do you think the time frame for completion is at this point?
It was supposed to be a 2-day project. It's been about 3 weeks.
So,
Don't know. They were supposed to be here today. They weren't here today.
We're not going to work today because of the court, is that correct?
we didn't have court,
Okay. So it could be because of that.
but they
Still,
probably
it's-
didn't know.
They
that.
probably didn't know that, right?
So, that's all I have.
I've got nothing at this point.
Good things come to those who wait.
Patience is a virtue.
Welcome to Schoolhouse Park.
Yeah, there you go.
That will be really good
Not
job.
that either.
That better be really good.
Good job.
I'm trying.
The Doug Park. Discussion on introduced ordinances, we have none. Introduction of ordinances, we do have one, which is ordinance 2019
If I can give a brief summary.
Wait, let me introduce
Oh,
it
you wanna read
first.
Okay.
So it's an ordinance establishing employee classes, grades, and salary ranges for 2019 and future years for non-contractual employees. This ordinance establishes employee salary ranges for 2019 and future years. The public hearing for the ordinance is scheduled for September 16, 2019 at 7 p.m. Now, before we make a motion to introduce, Ms. Sullivan.
Okay. At our last meeting, we were in discussion with Attorney Sordillo, who we were reviewing a number of positions that we are currently in the process of filling that were vacant. Some of those positions were held previously by one individual and were combined. Moving forward, some of those positions may become singular positions, but they were listed in our salary ordinance as a combined position. So because they were now individual positions, he brought to our attention that the salary ordinance that we had in place that listed as a combined position needed to be updated. And the sooner we did that, the better, since we were already changing some of those positions, and we'll be discussing some later this evening. I met with department heads last week, and met again with HR consultant today to review what's before you. Also met with Mr. Stevenson regarding this ordinance. The changes to this ordinance from the 2015 version are basically that we divided up the various positions into departments with Township Committee, Administration, Recreation, Finance, Municipal Court, Code Enforcement, Police, and Public Works. Where before that, they were all kind of together with the exception of Police and DPW. After review by the HR consultant today, she suggested that exempt employees who are department heads should be listed as salaries because they don't get overtime, and that the employees that are eligible for overtime could be listed as an hourly rate, which we had presented to Mr. Stevenson last week. So that's basically what this shows. There's not too many changes other than all the different positions were split up. There's no combined positions.
Okay, with that explanation, can we have a motion to introduce ordinance 2019-10?
I will make that motion, Mayor.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mayor, just one comment, just be aware that there could be some changes coming down the road based on if we go into a contract with the Public Works employees, because that may change what's currently in the ordinance as it's written.
Okay. So we'll bear that in mind if anything happens between now and when we actually have the public hearing.
Right, it was
That would
just
require
the
reintroduction.
DPW portion alone until,
We didn't touch any of that at this
Right.
point in time.
Right.
The discussion hasn't happened.
Okay. Public hearing of ordinances, we have none. Consent agenda. I don't think we have anything on the consent agenda. We do have one resolution, which is Resolution 2019-096. The resolution authorizes the sale of vehicles, equipment, and unfound property to be sold at the Somerset County auction, and that will be held later on in 2019. John, we asked you for an explanation of what we've got pending?
So the Somerset County has an auction, I believe, twice a year at this point in time. We missed the spring sale. So we have a number of pieces of equipment between the police department and myself that we no longer need, and we want to put them in the auction for this coming full season.
Okay. And it's this, just those pieces of equipment.
right, in order to sell them at auction, we need to show them in a resolution that we no longer need those pieces of equipment or vehicles.
And the unclaimed found property includes a guitar and 5 bicycles.
Somebody leave behind it.
Did someone leave behind a guitar?
Yes, it was called in, found by the police and stored, and nobody has claimed it.
Okay. And the same with the 5 bicycles. May we have a motion to approve Resolution 2019-096?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote, Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Mayor Jacobs?
Aye.
Thank you.
And the bill list is circulating. May we have a motion to approve the bill list pending the review of individual invoices?
So moved.
I'll second.
Again, roll call vote, Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Mayor Jacobs?
Aye.
Thank you.
There goes the bill list.
Thank you.
Discussion items. We have two matters that are continuing for discussion, which is Resolution 2019-094. Resolution authorizes the mayor and clerk to renew Bedminster Township's membership in the Suburban Municipal Joint Insurance Fund for a period of 3 years. When we last left this, Ms. Sullivan, you and Committeeman Stevenson were going to
So,
further
Mr.
evaluate
Stevenson,
options.
You asked me to reach out to Mika Sharkey, who's our risk manager, which I did. They are putting together some various options in addition to the Suburban Municipal JIP, of which we've been a member and have been a member for quite some time, since I think around 2005. But there are other options, so they're going to put together a whole report with costs and the pros and cons of each of them. They're our risk manager, they're looking out for our best interest, and they will have that for us by the next meeting. We do need to either notify the JIF that we're renewing our membership or moving on to some other JIF by October 1.
Okay.
So the next meeting is when we need to make a decision.
And that'll be consistent with what you're expecting to hear back from Mika
Yes,
Sharkey?
so- right.
And that'll give you and Committeeman Stevenson time to review the numbers and make a recommendation back to us. So if that's the case, does that mean that Resolution 2019-094 should be back
So
on the
that's
agenda?
holding till we determine if that's how we're going to go or not.
Okay. Okay. Second discussion is an ordinance regarding solicitation.
Our solicitation ordinance, yes.
Okay.
Renee and I are making progress on the redrafting of the ordinance. We met with Joe Sardillo to discuss it, and it's going very well. But our next step is to meet with the chief. In the ordinance, the chief has a lot of responsibility, bears a lot of responsibility, and we want to make sure that the practicality of the ordinance matches with the legality of the ordinance, so that we just don't create an ordinance and then it doesn't work. So we want it to work correctly. So Renee and I are going to schedule that, meet with the chief, and come back and give you an update on that after we do that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So moving to new business, which we just covered the solicitation ordinance. Something else that's on for new business and continuing is the vacant property zombie house discussion, which also sits with Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. So Renee, Judy and I met, so we last met, and we went through some of the ordinances. The one thing that we saw a bit of a surprise is we actually have a code on file that sorta, kinda doesn't really do it, but addresses it. So rather than, recreating the wheel and, drafting something up with an abandoned property that we talked about last week, I really don't think that's our issue. I think a property maintenance code similar to what our friends in Burnsville had might be what we're looking for, because at the end of the day, we just want the ability to have the tool in our tool bag to be able to go out and address a home that's not being kept up, and it's really just been, this is not for chip paint and that sort of thing. This has got to be a serious infraction that's affecting property values and that sort of thing. So the thought of the subcommittee was that rather than create the abandoned property concept, to just sort of piggyback off of what we already have but expand it some. The question I had for John would be that where it currently sits now, it's in the police section of our codes. The issue with amending it and moving it to a different section of the code, is that?
No.
Yeah, okay.
I
didn't
mean,
think so.
we'll speak further and you could catch me up on,
Yeah,
I know I had sent you Bridgewater and I went away, you looked at Bernardsville, and we'll catch up and talk and
sure.
decide where it should go.
And then my question for the group would just be, how do you want us to put pen to paper and put something together, or do you want us to come back with in concepts?
I think concepts, and I also, I think we talked about whether or not there's, whether any of the kind of associations or the homeowner associations might also be, a good opportunity to bounce some of those ideas off of.
Okay.
I believe at one point, Commissioner Payne may have expressed some interest. I can't remember if it was on solicitation or if it was on the zombie house ordinance. You think it was
Okay.
zombie?
Between now and next meeting, we'll circle that wagon, but I also want to get with John and talk about what we need, because I think it's an easier fix. What I was seeing in the ordinances on just the property maintenance was much more manageable than your abandoned property code that you're trying to piggyback off the state statute and incorporate the state statute. I think we can get what we need here by just having some similar to what our friends and neighbors next to.
I think we've stepped before. I think John helped us with an issue before. You might have used that particular.
On Airport Road.
I mean, it's in place, it's a single clause in our codes, and it just basically says...
It's very general, right?
It's very general,
but
and
it
it
could
talks
be
about leaning, and then
amended.
you're covering your costs through the lien, but I think we need something that's maybe a little bit more detailed in what it is we're looking at, why it is we're looking to fit, and then how we go about doing that, so that, the township residents understand, it's not, what the rules of the road, so to speak, are. It's just not too expressive right now, it's not very specific. Yeah, so.
Okay, so that we'll continue this on new business discussions as we proceed and hear back from this committee's further inquiries. Old business, short-term rentals. Ms. Sullivan, any update on short-term rentals?
Short-term rentals, there is some information, a letter at your place from the zoning officials, some infractions he wanted to just share with you, but not regarding short-term rentals.
Engine braking. Any developments on engine braking?
Nothing more than to say that on October 28th at 8:01 a.m., John, I hope we can steal the sign back, the braking sign, and reposition it to remind folks. With the chief.
Belongs to the police department.
Oh, chief, can we borrow your sign again?
We'll work it out.
No other updates.
There's also a report from the code official regarding, they had a meeting with the prosecutor and representatives from Putnam Park last Tuesday, and he gave you a short summary of how that went. And they did meet with the judge. The judge did give them some direction of how to proceed, and there will be a follow-up later in the month.
So what's being reported here is that they had the meeting. They're scheduled to reappear on September 17th at 1:30. So I presume that reappearance is in front of the judge.
Right.
And they'll be doing another, they have the site visit today. Okay. So Putnam Park continues its ways through. And still, any further feedback at all from residents about any of the other issues with management? Been quiet from your end?
The question I've gotten is just that, they've seen a lot of walking around and people they don't necessarily recognize. Is it for sale? Is it not for sale? Are these potential purchasers? I have no information.
Right, and on my discussions with the residents, when we talked to them about looking at some of the rental issues and making possible referral over to legal aid, there's been no further
They've
follow-up.
had discussions with legal aid. Legal aid gave them some options of things that they could do. They would need to move forward as a group, and they didn't have enough of contingency.
Do you know when they had that meeting?
It was a while ago.
Okay.
It was a while ago. But I did speak with the one resident that we've been in contact with, and she said that there wasn't any agreement from a group.
Okay. Okay, well, we've certainly made that outreach and made those connections, so it's certainly up to them to make the decisions of how they want to proceed. CPNL outages. Mr. Hickey.
Just as I reported last time, it looks like the work replacing the line over the 287 entrance ramp has been completed. As we mentioned in a lot of detail last time, that will provide circuit switching and therefore redundancy for our neighbors in the hills. We've also received a lot of positive feedback in terms of the way that JCP&L has kind of upped their game this year in terms of their responsiveness and their communications. I mean, let's face it, they came in here earlier this year, got their heads handed to them, right? And they could have crawled under a rock and avoided us, but instead they turned around and have worked very closely with us to figure out how to improve the service levels here in Bedminster. So I think kudos to them. We'll continue to work with them closely to realize additional improvements and hold the gains of what we already have accomplished.
Right, and specifically to, kudos to Carol Bianchi.
Terrific.
Who's really sort of stepped up and certainly understands the need for community participation and community involvement from an entity like JCP&L, and I think she's really sort of kept JCP&L up front and in the face of the residents and been a good point person for not just this committee, but for the residents as well, who do feel that they have an open channel to get to her directly.
Absolutely,
So
and she's been very responsive every time, so it's terrific. She's a really good advocate for us.
Our residents were so prepared and educated, and I think that they were actually shocked.
I think you're right.
And they stepped up the game to make, to come up to the residents' level.
Right.
So
Right.
that's
Yep.
great.
Yep. Public comments. Second opportunity for the microphone. We'll recognize Mr. Haggerty.
I'm back, hello. Brian Haggerty, Fairview Drive, Bedminster. And as much as I'm a grouch and a questioner, sometimes a complainer up here, I do recognize it's a great sacrifice for those of you who hold the elective office, those who run for elective office, those who run for elective office. And if the opposing party were here, I would thank them too for trying, but they're not here. Did we ever find what happened to the stormwater management plan?
We provided the stormwater management plan for the one property that you were
No,
requesting.
it's there. We bought a copy of the stormwater application report, the municipal stormwater management plan. It was up, then the link was going somewhere else.
Okay,
No,
I
no, no.
reached out to the engineer's office. They were reviewing
Okay.
the link. I
So
haven't heard back on
we'll
it.
find it, okay. Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Any other comments? We will move to Township Committee comments, and I will make a note that we do have an executive session, that there are, let's see, just double checking my, we have 4 matters on executive session, and we will be returning from executive session, and we will be presumably considering 4 resolutions as a consequence of those discussions in executive session. So if anyone wants to stick around for those, they're certainly welcome to do so. And we will now move to Township Committee comments starting again with Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. My only comment was that New Jersey Monthly
New Jersey
Right.
Monthly.
came out with their top places to live in the state, and their last edition, we were 27th, which is pretty darn good. And this time, we're number 3. So I think it's a credit to our residents that care, that show up, they're informed, they have a point, they drive their point home, and, and it's also credit to everybody in this room. All the hard work that we do, and it was nice to be recognized in that way, and very proud of it.
Mr.
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Couldn't say any better.
And just also certainly the face of the town, really the folks at the front desk who deal with the residents all the time, the folks who drive around in those police vehicles, the folks who drive around in the DPW vehicles, and frankly, a lot of that is, not just a lot of it, more than a lot of it is you guys. So thank you for all the work you guys do. With that, we have motion to go to executive session.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Hi.
All right. All right, we will see you in a bit.
I'm gonna run out to my car, I forgot my drink.
Okay.
If I get.
We're back.
Okay, we are back. It is 10:18 and we are back from executive session. We have one resolution that we are going to consider and introduce, which is resolution appointing Robin Ray to the position of Deputy Township Clerk in accordance with Section 2-4.5 of the revised ordinance of the Township of Bedminster. And this position comes with a salary at $15,600. Once again, this position is necessitated by the departure of our former deputy clerk, Trina Lindsay. I've all had the opportunity to review the resolution. May we have a motion to approve?
I will make that motion, Mayor.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Mayor Jacobs?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, may we have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. We off?
Yeah. So where's, oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Here you go.
Which property is that?